The Quran in 1038 challenges the doubters of the Quran's divine origins to produce a chapter or speech similar to the Quran if indeed it is man-made. Bearing in mind some of the smallest chapters are barely 2 lines long. However, if one were to consider the language in the Quran and need to verify whether it is actually revealed from a divine, wise creator of the universe, consider verse 2461 and honestly ask, is this proof that it was divinely revealed, or was it really written by some ancient, ignorant Arabs? Its message is not altered whether it is read in Arabic or English or any other language. Here's what it reads. There is not upon the blind blame, nor upon the disabled blame, nor upon the ill blame, nor upon yourselves when you eat from your houses, or the houses of your fathers, or the houses of your mothers, or the houses of your brothers, or the houses of your sisters, or the houses of your father's brothers, or the houses of your father's sisters, or the houses of your mother's brothers, or the houses of your mother's sisters, or from the houses whose keys you possess, or from the house of your friend. There is no blame upon you whether you eat together or separately. So when you enter houses, salute yourselves with a greeting from the providence of Allah, blessed and good. Thus Allah makes evident to you the signs that possibly you would consider. End quote. What is the actual wisdom contained in this verse? And if it doesn't contain some wisdom, is it really a divine wisdom that could not have been put together by anyone other than a universal creator God? Certain so-called prophecies are often cited by Muslims in order to prove the Quran's miraculous nature. However, if remembered, evidence from previous video series that the Quran was compiled many years after its supposed compilation, then when certain prophecies are cited in the Quran as evidence for its miraculous nature, these are no such prophecies at all. For example, an often cited prophecy is from Quran chapter 30 entitled The Romans, when it talks about the imminent defeat of the Byzantines by the Persians. At the time of the supposed revelation of the Quran, the Roman Byzantines and the Persians were competing against one another. The Romans were led by Heraclius, whereas the Persians were led by Khosrow Parvez, who reigned between 590 to 628 AD. In the 3rd and 4th verses of the chapter in question, it says the Romans will reverse their defeat into a victory in a few years' time. Muslims believe this prophecy was fulfilled with Heraclius' campaign of 622 AD, the Roman victory over the Persians, and cite it as an example of the miraculous nature of the Quran. The Quran was compiled by Uthman in 650 AD, so if the Quran was written after these dates, as the evidence suggests, the events could be back projected by including them into the text. No one knows for sure when this so-called prophecy was given, and since the prophecy states that the Romans will be victorious within a few years, knowing the precise date of this alleged prophecy is an essential and integral part of verifying whether it came to pass or not. The first verse of the chapter refers to the defeat of the Byzantine Empire at the hands of the Sasanian Empire, which occurred in 614 AD. But this does not mean that 614 AD was the year in which the chapter of the verse was revealed, or before it. The claims are vague, such as in a close land, few years, will be defeated. It does not answer exactly when, where, who, for it to be a valid prophecy at all. To find answers to some of the above questions, as the Quran fails to answer any of them, one must look at secondary and tertiary sources which were compiled some 100 to 200 years and more after the event. Hadith literature such as Tirmizi, compiled more than 200 years after Muhammad's death, mentions the event, which indicates Muslims knew about it, so it could have been included retrospectively. For example, in Tirmidhi, it suggests that the Quranic verses were revealed after the battle and not before. For example, narrated Atiyah Abu Sa'id, on the day of Badr, the Romans had a victory over the Persians, so the believers were pleased with that. Then the following was revealed, Alif Lam Mim, the Romans have been defeated, up to his saying, the believers will rejoice with the help of Allah. Quran chapter 30, 1-5. He said, so the believers were happy with the victory of the Romans over the Persians. Quran chapter 105 is called the Elephant. It mentions in a few lines a story which is set in the year Muhammad was born about how Allah protected the then pagan Meccan shrine, Kaaba, and its black stone against the Christian Abyssinian army of Abraha who came to attack it with elephants. Abraha was a Christian from Abyssinia. The Ethiopian Aksum Empire ruled Yemen at the time, and he had built a church in Yemen in an attempt to attract and also divert worship from pagan Mecca to his church and towards Christianity. In the year 570 AD, a pagan from Mecca travelled to the church and defiled it by urinating, defecating, and desecrating its holy artifacts. This act incensed Abraha, who gathered an army. He then travelled with his elephants to Mecca through the desert. Mecca immediately surrendered upon the news of an imminent attack. Eventually, Allah destroyed Abraha and his army by sending a flock of birds that dropped stones from the sky. Here are a few examples from some prominent Islamic commentaries explaining what had happened. The links are in the description. Please feel free to pause the video to read the commentaries. There are many anomalies with this story. Firstly, why would Allah protect the pagans and its building which housed many idols? This is obviously blasphemous, whilst at the same time allowing the destruction and desecration of the Abrahamic Christians and their place of worship. Secondly, it was the pagan who antagonized and oppressed by incensing the Christian leader by desecrating his church. Thirdly, elephants are animals that spend around 18 hours a day eating and eat around 10% of their body weight. One adult elephant can eat in excess of 600 pounds of food a day. They also drink up to 50 gallons of water a day. Fourthly, the distance from Yemen to Mecca is over 1,124 kilometers. This will take over a month to reach its destination. A journey in the desert heat and rugged terrain is not suited to elephants, as 50% of an elephant's diet is leaves, which are scarce in the desert. Number 5. Elephants are native to Africa and India, not Arabia, so they would have had to be brought over from foreign lands to an environment they are not suited to. Finally, the birds, no matter how big and numerous, and no matter how high stones are dropped from or how big they are, cannot destroy an army of people and elephants. Here is a map showing, as the crow flies, a minimum distance of 1,000 kilometers between Yemen and Mecca. Also notice the rugged terrain the elephants would have had to traverse. A further contention is, why did Allah not protect the Kaaba in 930 AD during the Hajj pilgrimage when Muslims were massacred? The references are cited in the book Islam the Honest Truth. At the time, Mecca was sacked by a Kalmatian leader called Abu Tahir al-Jannabi, who was a Shia Muslim. He and his army killed around 30,000 Muslim pilgrims. He taunted them as he killed, quoting the aforementioned Quranic chapter stating, "Where are the birds to protect you?" He also desecrated the Zamzam well by dumping corpses within it to rot. He left bodies to rot in the streets and pillaged the city of Mecca. He desecrated Islam's most sacred sites, cemeteries, and graves. He banned Hajj pilgrimage for more than 10 years. The Kaaba building was looted, its door was unhinged and taken away, and the building badly damaged and demolished. He took the black stone to his palace in Al-Hasa near Bahrain, current-day eastern Saudi Arabia, for a period of over 23 years. He desecrated it daily by urinating on it and wiped it with feces. The Abbasid Caliphate offered huge amounts of money to get the black stone back. Initially they offered 50,000 dinars, but this was rejected. Only after paying a then fortune of 120,000 dinars was it returned in 952 AD. But when it was returned, it was broken into tiny pieces. Its small fragmentary stones is what remains today. Al-Jannabi died a natural death in 944 AD and was succeeded by his children. Here is an image of the current black stone worshipped at Mecca. The arrows show the images of the actual pieces of the original black stone that was destroyed. It is now fixed together with black tar and a silver frame to keep it together. Further, with references provided in Islam the Honest Truth, the Kaaba building that existed from the time of Muhammad had been totally damaged by a fire during the siege of Mecca on 31st of October 683 AD. At the time, the Kaaba was protected by a wooden structure covered with mattresses, which caught fire and burned down. While the black stone was damaged by bursting into flames, it broke into 3 pieces and had to be bound within a silver frame. Ibn Zubayr rebuilt the Kaaba completely by changing the design of the building by altering its original square plan to a rectangular one to include the semicircular hatim structure into the building. He also added an additional doorway to the building. The original building had only one. His new Kaaba was built entirely of stone. The old one was of alternating layers of stone and wood. In one of the most important books about the history of Islam, Tariq Dimashq, volume 16, page 192, it says, in 692 AD, the Kaaba was destroyed again, this time by a catapult in the Second Muslim Civil War when Ibn Zubayr and Mecca were surrounded by the Umayyads. Many Muslims were killed and the Kaaba was completely burnt. After the defeat of Zubayr, the Caliph Abdul Malik ordered the governor Hajjaj ibn Yusuf to demolish the Kaaba completely and to rebuild it as a cube from the original plan from Muhammad's time. So in conclusion, certain verses in the Quran, such as 24:61, contains no wisdom at all, no less divine wisdom. It is absurd, which indicates it was written by ignorant ancient Arabs, not by a wise creator of the universe. Certain so-called prophecies, such as Quran chapter 30, is often cited in order to prove the Quran's miracle. However, if remembered that the Quran was compiled many years after its supposed compilation, then when certain prophecies are cited as evidence for its miracle nature, these are no such prophecies at all. The Quran is too vague for it to be a valid miracle and too reliant on sources hundreds of years later to be a credible prophecy. Stories in the Quran are illogical, nonsensical, with no connection to reality, history, or any cohesiveness. For example, chapter 105 mentions the moral of Allah protecting the then pagan shrine of the Kaaba against the Christians. The moral is unreasoned because the Kaaba and the Black Stone were destroyed numerous times, even by Muslims themselves during the civil wars, and again in 930 AD by the Qarmatian leader Abu Tahir al-Jannabi. Further, the Kaaba the Muslims circumambulate today is not the original building from Muhammad's time, and the black stone remains in broken pieces and damaged forever because Allah had failed to protect it.